It's a long haul. So I encourage you, if you're going to do it, obviously the legislative session is ended for this year, but it's not too early to start for the next session in January, right? So you get your local law and coordinate with your senator and assembly person to make sure it's in the form they need it. There's a process. There are forms that you need to have filled out. And then you get them to introduce it. They have to carry your home rule request. So that's not so much of an issue. But what we learned, and which I'm sure many of you have learned and know, that the process in Albany is like sausage making. It's ugly. And what happens is bills go into committees. And the way that legislators in Albany want to not advance a bill is they keep it in a committee. So you have to stay attentive to that process. You have to be in touch with your senator and assembly person at all times during the process, soon as they get into session. And you have to follow how it's progressing through the committees. If it's not, you have to find out why it's not. You have to try to get to somebody on the committee, or have your senator talk to another senator or an assembly person to get sort of a coalition together to advance this. You really have to work with them to get it out of committees into the floor. In Warwick's case, it took us about 4 years to go through the committees. We did change one aspect of our law. The law in Long Island was up to 2% transfer tax. We were advised that if we reduced our amount, it would be better. So we did. We took it down to 0.75%, with a few exceptions. There are exceptions. You also can take out a portion of the value exempt from the tax. So in other words, a house that's 300,000, maybe only tax 100,000 of it. So over a certain threshold, you can do all of those things in your bill. We finally were successful in getting it out of committees into the floor, and Governor Pataki signed it in 2006. Once that happens, once the governor signs it into law, the bills, all of them, including the Hudson Valley bill, requires you to go to a referendum of your voters. I recommend you do that in November because you get a bigger turnout in November elections. But it is required. So in other words, you're not imposing it. The governor is not imposing it. Your senator or assemblymen are not imposing it, right? They're just giving you the authority to ask your voters. And I think that's the way it should be, right? So next slide, please. So again, that's if you want to go it alone. And there have been communities in Orange County that have tried. Some have gotten it out and not had it signed by the governor for various reasons. I would tell you, don't be disheartened. Continue in your efforts. Persistence pays off. The fourth option is to have Orange County submit the home rule request. Why is that an advantage to you? So when Ulster County did it, they got it included in the Hudson Valley Act, and that allows you to skip the step of your own home rule request, fighting the committee process, getting it to the floor, et cetera, et cetera. Excuse me. So it saves you a lot, and it allows you to then focus on creating a very thoughtful community preservation plan, because that's also a requirement of most of the legislation I've seen. You have to have a plan that shows what you're trying to preserve, why you're trying to preserve it, and why it's important to the future of your community to preserve it, right? You have to lay that out, and you have to have that out in front of the public. You have to have a hearing on it. You have to have it to them prior to any kind of a referendum vote. So it's a really important document. Now, the Community Preservation Plan and actually the Community Preservation Acts are broader than Warwick's initial effort, which was focused on primarily farmland, which is important because it's still one of the largest employers and economic drivers in the county of Orange. So it's not to say it's not important, but the Community Preservation Plan is a broader scope. So it allows you to preserve things like critical environmental areas, critical recreational areas, trails, parkland, that kind of thing. Historic buildings, oddly enough. And we actually used it to preserve uh, William Henry Seward's birthplace in the village of Florida. So it has advantages that are beneficial to the community. And again, there are communities in Orange County that maybe farming is a smaller portion, but they have growing population. They have need for recreational areas. They might have watershed areas that serve their communities that they need to make sure that they're preserving around that the watershed of that critical area. So all of those things are important, and they are included in your plan, and they need to be clearly articulated in your plan. That makes it easier for your public to understand it and easier for you to defend why you're asking your community to impose a tax, right? Next slide, Alan, please. Okay, so what are the issues in you've gone through this process. You've either gotten your own home rule request, or the Orange County successful in getting into the Hudson Valley Plan. Now you have to have your community preservation plan together, and you actually have to have a campaign to convince the voters of your community why they should do this. Why should they impose a tax? Everybody hates taxes, right? We all hate them. We know New York is a high tax state. My advice to you is do not try to say it's not a tax, because it is a tax. It's a tax on real estate transfers within your community. But generally, all of the legislation requires the buyer of the property to pay the tax, which means it's people coming into your community. And I would say the people in your community, right, have already essentially taxed themselves, because they built schools, they built firehouses, they funded ambulances, they funded parks. And so they've done the hard work and the sweat and the investment to make your community attractive. So when someone wants to come to a community because it is attractive, I don't think it's unreasonable for them to be asked to help contribute to that. And that's really the argument you make when you're trying to talk to someone about why this is a good thing. You will get opposition from realtors, not all realtors, and I don't want to paint a broad picture here, but New York State Realtors Association does not like it. They consider that it diminishes their inventory. I'm not sure why it's their inventory, but that's what they feel. I will tell you that in all the communities where this exists today, most realtors see it as an advantage, and in fact use it as a selling point as they bring people into the community to sell them a home. Our realtors will drive them by a farm. We have signs on the road that say this farm is preserved, and they use that, and they say that farm's always going to stay open. So, but expect it, you'll get it, and the level of it will depend on what happens. I would encourage you, and I have a whole presentation at some point I'm happy to share with people on how to do a successful campaign, and it does show you some ideas and how to get realtors on board. Another argument is it prevents home buyers from acquiring homes. One of the arguments I've heard is, well, we don't want to, it's hard for a young person to buy a home. Well, it is hard because land values in our Hudson Valley are higher. It's because it's a beautiful valley. And Orange County is the jewel of that. So yes, that is difficult, but I would tell you that it is part of the closing costs. It is paid by the buyer generally. It does get wrapped into a mortgage, and it actually increases the value of your house. It doesn't hurt home values. It's just not the case. And you'll hear that argument. Well, it hurts the value. It's not true. Warwick's home values were consistently above the median sale price in Orange County. And again, the preserved lands are used by realtors to sell homes. So you can blunt all of the negatives you hear about this. Some legislators in Albany will say, well, we don't like raising taxes. It's not, I don't want that on my, well, you're not asking them to raise the tax. You're simply asking them to allow your voters to decide. And again, excuse me, that to me, that's the essence of democracy. I don't see that argument at all. Next slide. So why is it important? It's really important. Alan mentioned the town of Warwick's preserved 5,000 acres. Since our transfer tax was in effect in 2007, it's generated about $16 million. And because we had that $16 million, we were able to leverage it in grant funding from primarily New York State Department of Ag and Markets or the United States government Natural Resource Conservation Service program, which funds either 75% or 50%. The state program now has an additional 87.5% program if the land stays affordable for new farmers. So having a source, a match, if you will, really positions you in a much better position, because otherwise you're scrambling around. The landowner is going to donate it, are going to have to get it from some other entity, and the land trusts play a role in that, but they don't have infinite funds either. And so to have your own dedicated fund, it just makes you more competitive. The town of Warwick has been successful in every single application it's made to New York State and the federal government. And I believe it's because we had that transfer tax in place. Now, there's another important thing happening, and it's just starting to happen. There's a coalition of affordable home developers, if you will, and land trusts. And it's called, I believe, the Hudson Valley Alliance for Housing and Conservation. You're going to hear more about it probably in the months ahead. But it's the idea, look, we want to preserve the quality of life. We know it's important, but we also need housing. We all recognize, I know as the Association of Orange County Supervisors and Mayors, we've talked about this. We do understand the need for more affordable housing in our communities. And we want to certainly take a leadership position in doing that. So the town of Red Hook, which is, I think that it was the sixth community, Warwick was the sixth, they were the seventh in New York State to have the real estate transfer tax authority. Red Hook has done something creatively just recently. They targeted a farm that they wanted to preserve. And when they put the deal together, there was a portion of the farm that wasn't ideal farm soils. And so they excluded it from their easement. And that allowed that portion of it to be working with a developer proposed to be an affordable housing development adjacent to this farm. So it was kind of a win-win for Red Hook. They now have this beautiful preserved farm, and then in the future we'll have some affordable housing for their community. So having the real estate transfer tax in your community allows you some flexibility in being able to do something like that. And I would say, having that authority just ensures that your community is going to grow and it's going to respect its environment, right? Its water resources, its wildlife resources, its open space and vistas, which your residents, one of the reasons they're there, and also your working farmland. All of our 38 farms that we preserved in the town of Warwick are currently operating as farms. They have not ceased to be farms. They don't pay less taxes than they paid before. They had an ag exemption. They paid ag taxes, but they're employing people. They've diversified. One thing I will ask and say to you is, in your community, the Community Preservation Act and that authority is important, but you also need to make sure that your zoning is friendly to the kinds of things you're trying to protect and preserve. So if it's farmland, that you're making provisions to be farm friendly in your community, and making your residents understand the importance of that. And same can be said for recreation. So next slide, Alan. Or is that the last slide? It is the last. Oh, it is the last slide. So again, I would just tell everyone to keep pressing forward. It's important. I know the legislature, Alan, can talk more about it, but I believe they've already working through their committees home rule request to get included in the Hudson Valley Act. So I'll turn it back to Alan, and then we can field questions.
Mike, thank you. Wonderful presentation. I want to afford an opportunity for questions and answers from the participants. Just quickly, the Orange County Legislature has, through the Rules Committee just a week ago, reintroduced their request for the home rule request for including Orange County in the Hudson Valley Community Preservation Act. So hoping that'll gain some traction this year. I think it could be a really important tool for the County of Orange. But while everything's fresh in your mind, I want to give the participants the opportunity to ask questions. And let's see, you should have the ability to raise your hand, but I'm a little more comfortable with Teams than Zoom. But so let me take a look at this. I'm going to stop sharing. Okay. Being that I'm not seeing any hand raisings here, if you have questions, just please oh, there we go. I see it now, Ted. Thank you.
Hi.
Ted Warren. Ted, you have a question?
Yeah. Well, first, I just wanted to say thank you to former Supervisor Sweeten and to you as well, Commissioner Sorensen, for having this very informative. And I especially appreciate the sort of real life experience tips and tricks, as they say, to having these conversations with the community. You've already provided some information in terms of what's happening at the county level, and I guess I just wanted to number one, see what you think the environment, how positive the environment is for the county being able to join the Hudson Valley Community Preservation Act, and if there's anything that folks can do at the municipal level to help with that effort.
Well, from what I see from both the county executive's office and the legislature, there's a very strong desire on behalf of the elected officials here to include Orange County in the Hudson Valley Community Preservation Plan. So I think it's really just a matter of ensuring that there's support from the Senate and the Assembly and also the governor's office. So even if it makes it through the committees and gets passed at the Senate and the Assembly, we still need Governor Hochul to sign off on it. So Orange County needs that support from all levels of government here in New York. But locally, I think is very strong support for the program. I think we're one of the fastest growing counties in New York State, so there is a lot of development pressure, and there are some unique properties in each town that are really important to the character of those communities or the vibrancy of the agricultural sector. And we really needed to start yesterday, and it would have been nice to have a few more communities included and be authorized to do the community preservation plan. So I know the town of Chester and the town of Bloom and Grove created community preservation plans modeled after Warwick's, and they as Mike said, need to be persistent in that request, but it would make it life easier for all the communities in Orange County if we're just included within the Hudson Valley.
Yeah, and Alan, and I forgot to mention that most of the legislation requires a community to have sort of a demonstrated investment themselves, right? So in our case, we had the $9.5 million bond. So I would urge a community to pursue a program regardless as you're working to get the Community Preservation Act in place. But whether it's through taxation or a small bond, really look at your community, look at the critical parcels, and work to acquire them. You can still apply to the various funding programs. It doesn't preclude it. And if you have to make the 25% match, if it's a state program, maybe that's important to your community, right? So that you should seek that authority regardless. And keep pressure on, if Orange County does pass a home rule request, keep pressure on your elected officials. That's what you can do. That's where you can be most helpful, because they need to hear from enough people that this is important to the health of the people they represent, right? And use the talking points I gave you as to blunt the arguments that you'll hear. Again, it's a tax. It's going to hinder new people moving in. It's not true. There's no evidence that it's true.
Mike, I'm getting more familiar with Zoom here. So I see that we had 2 questions. The first from Ingrid Hackle. Question is, she wants to thank you for the presentation. And she asked, who has led the outreach to property owners in Warwick to identify prospective projects?
All right, so initially we had a councilman and a volunteer who was head of our ag board, Seymour Gordon and Leonard Buck. They had approached farms to get an interest. But I will tell you that as farms enter your program, and usually it's iconic farms in your community, it sells itself. So the other landowners look at this, and farmers are pretty smart people, right? And developers most times will tell them, yes, I can get you, $1 million for your farm. Okay, but we'll give you $50,000, and when we get approval, you'll get your money. Sometimes they don't get approval for whatever reason. We had a farm that rushed in and they found, the buried Indians on the property, right? So that just stopped everything in its tracks. Subsequently, that developer came to the town and wanted to put it into the program. So the advantages of having a program that the town is leading is that you can close these things generally quickly, a year in some instances, maybe 2 if it's a state program that sometimes takes longer. They get their money, they get their development money, the farmer, they still own the land. They can still sell the land, and we've had several farms sell, and it doesn't lose value, and it stayed in farming. And so it's a win-win for the landowner, the farmer who's aging out. There are, believe it or not, young people that are interested in farming, and they particularly want to be in the Hudson Valley. So I think that's important. You do need someone that, if you have a committee, an open space committee, a conservation board, they have a pretty good sense of the parcels. You can work with your assessor, you can look at your ag role, and you can find the parcels. And it may be that the supervisor has to go out, or it may be a councilman volunteers to go out, or a conservation board member, or just someone in your community that values living there. So, yep.
Okay, and another question that came up, they asked, who prepared the grant applications for leveraged funds? I think that's in reference to the Farmland Protection Implementation Grants, or?
Yeah, we used Amy Olney. There are different ones, people that can do it for you. Our staff provide a lot of the information for the application, but I would recommend you use someone who is familiar with the process. It helps speed it. The state Farmland Protection Program in particular is very detailed, and as step by step, they have a process they like followed. So you do have to be able to do that. The federal program, which is a little broader focus than the state program, the state program generally has been focused on farmland. The federal program is a little broader in scope, so a little easier perhaps to be involved in. But I would recommend you get someone who has been involved in writing some of these things.
Mike, thank you. Are there other questions? You can either put the question in the chat or in the Q&A. Raise your hand.
This is Neil Kraus. Hi, Mike.
Hey, Neil, how are you?
Good. Well, I have two questions. First off, Mike, we have a unique situation here in Woodbury. We don't have a lot of farms. As a matter of fact, we don't really have any and stuff. Would you be willing? We have a land preservation committee, which I'm chairing. If we bought you dinner or lunch, whatever, do you think we could persuade you to come down and discuss with the committee, with our committee, some of our unique needs and some of the steps we can take?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't need a lot anyway, Neil, so it's okay. I'm happy to do it.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Contact you.
Yeah, Alan can get you my email stuff if you want. It's actually easy. It's michael@oclt.org.
Okay. Now, and Alan, question is, the Orange County is fully behind this. And as I understand it, the county legislature is behind it and
Yeah.
stuff. And most likely the New York State Assembly is behind this and like that. But I believe in the past, we've gone that far and then we have hit a roadblock in the Senate. I don't want to put you in an uncomfortable situation or anything. Are we faced with possibly the same situation? We may go 2/3 or 3/4 of the way there and hit a block.
I know that's been a roadblock in the past. I think I'd go back to Mike's recommendation early on is you need to be persistent. And I think, the benefit of the program is, unquestionable. The program is very beneficial, as Mike spoke to. Really what the county and the municipalities are asking for is the right to go back to their constituents and ask them for permission to put in place the transfer tax. So, and again, I think there's some misconceptions out there that if you're protecting open space, and Mike spoke to this earlier, that somehow that's, affecting the opportunities for housing, but I don't believe that is the case. And, again, there are groups that are already working together to accomplish both goals. So, I think it's just a matter, you just got to keep with it. And, hopefully, the powers that be will be persuaded that, this is the right thing to do.
Okay.
And I think you have a real opportunity with this idea of sort of merging affordable housing into why this is important, right? You're not going to use your community preservation fund to create the affordable housing, but you're going to get parcels where you protect a fair portion of it, and then maybe give an opportunity for affordable housing on another portion. That may be a way to overcome the obstacle. You do have elections coming up, and so now's a great time to pressure folks and get a commitment. Get a commitment. Why would you be afraid of putting the question to the voters, right? Isn't that what democracy is all about?
Yep. So what we'll do, Mike, I'll arrange with you to come over and present to the committee. If you don't eat that much, what I will do is I'll guarantee you quality.
There you go. Very good.
Are there other questions from the? All right, I see another hand has gone up. I believe.
Hi, this is Ingrid Heckel. Yeah, thanks for answering my earlier questions. I work for the DEC Hudson River Estuary Program. I'm now manager of the program, and we have worked with communities to advance open space preservation over many years. And I just wanted to give a plug for our grants program as an opportunity to fund the development of community preservation plans if there are communities that want to try to move forward, because developing that plan is one element. And I recognize many communities they're facing the first hurdle with just getting the authorization, but wanted to put that out there, and that we also have staff that can provide some technical assistance with that process. So feel free to reach out. And then secondly, just as I volunteer in the town of New Paltz and serve on the CPF board there, and worked through our campaign to establish the fund. And so it's just great to hear more about Warwick's experience as we're getting started here in New Paltz. Thank you.
Ingrid, thank you for sharing that. The fact that there's funding to help with the community preservation plan, I think is really important.
It's great, and I've read New Paltz's plan. It's really well done. It's actually better than ours, and it's a great plan. So that's a good resource to have.
Thanks. I do have one quick related question to the plan, is that the legislation requires that the plan be updated or amended every 5 years. And I was curious how Warwick has approached that.
We have a community preservation board, which was morphed out of the ag board when we passed the legislation. And so they meet semi-regularly and they review the plan. There have been additions to it. You can't add to your plan parcel. So we didn't talk about that, but any parcel that is going to be able to be acquired through use of the funds has to be in your plan. So, and it doesn't just being in the plan doesn't make the landowner obligated to anything. It doesn't mean you're going to preserve that. It just means that you believe that that's important piece to preserve. And you can't change that plan for the first 3 years, I believe, in most of the plans. So you have to be careful in using resources like Ingrid's to really do a great plan, and then just keep it updated.
Thanks.
Michelle, I see you have your hand up.
Hi, thanks. Thank you, Alan and Mike. Great presentation. A few years ago, we in the town of Tuxedo did a complete rezoning, and there were 3 large tracts of land that we zoned conservation, and that does allow some housing. It allows 4-acre housing, or you could cluster the homes as long as with the same ratio of homes to acreage, but then you would have to conserve the land around the clustered homes. So that was kind of our first step to introduce that whole idea. And I'm just want to present that and see your thoughts on if that down the road would help the town get a conservation plan approved, because it shows an effort to conserve land.
I don't, Albany's Albany, and politics plays into everything, so it's hard to say. That is a tool, and we used it in Warwick, introduced our zoning at the same time, actually, as we did the referendum, and used cluster zoning extensively. So of land that we didn't preserve through our legislation, we've preserved on average 60% of any parcel that gets developed. It's a smart way to do it, and I would hope all communities have that provision. I don't know if it helps you get the legislation passed. The legislation, the forces behind stopping one town's legislation versus another really has nothing to do with their efforts to date, I think, to preserve land. It has to do with constituencies that either don't value protecting the space or simply interested in developing land. Like, again, and I don't want, not a broad brush to insult any realtors. Their business is selling homes, right? So they need an inventory. And don't get me wrong, there is a need for housing. We know that. Young people need places to live. I think there've been talk about, when we build a big warehouse and use 50% of the site for the warehouse, why do we leave a lawn of 50%, and why not put some housing on that, right? It's a great concept. And so your message when you're pushing for your community preservation is it's a total package. And this is a tool for the package to preserve critical areas so that your community continues to thrive while you work on those other issues.
Yeah, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay. If there are no other questions, I'll take just a very few minutes to just give you a brief update of Orange County's efforts to update our open space plan. And hopefully I don't lose everyone as I do this. So just bear with me one moment. We have, we've set up an ARC, we call it an ARC Hub page for the Orange County Open Space Plan. And I'm just I'm gonna pull it up on my screen and then share it with you. So, and I'm gonna drop the link to that page in the chat. There you go. So, let me just open this and okay, I'm going to share my screen. So if you go to the link that I dropped into the chat, it'll bring you to this page, which is the open space plan for Orange County. And this is a project that we've been working on for a little time now, but hoping to, our plan is to wrap it up in the fall of this year. The county's existing open space plan was adopted in 2004. So it's been 20 years, so certainly very much in need of an update, but it was a very well thought out plan. And so our intention is to update the plan, to strengthen it in some areas, but so that the 2024 update will be not a departure from the original plan, but rather building upon the efforts of that plan. And so I'm just going to scroll through this. We have a variety of open space themes that are discussed within the plan. We've developed a vision statement. We're still going to be working on the vision statement a little bit. So we have 6 overarching sectors that will be addressed in the plan. However, we're also adding a 7th, which is forestry. So the sectors that you see here, we have agriculture, biodiversity, the built environment, historical, cultural resources, recreation, and water resources. We also have developed some very detailed geographic information systems mapping. So if you go to the website, we have a whole series of maps that we've developed, one showing our agricultural districts, another showing soils. We have the built environment map. We have a major development map. We even have a map that's showing all the solar installations in the county. Just forewarn everyone, I think we had a few glitches in some of the links, so you may have to actually click on the map and try again and click on the view map to actually get the map to pull up. So we're working to resolve that. But probably most importantly, within the within this page, there are surveys that you can complete, and we encourage you to take a look at those surveys, and if you have time to fill those out. The more input that we get from the public, the better informed we'll be in terms of developing the programs, plans and projects to fulfill implementing the open space plan. And so, at your leisure, we haven't set a deadline for completing the surveys, but there's surveys for each of the sectors that's identified in the open space plan. So if you haven't already, please take some time to complete the survey. Feel free to share the website with your friends, neighbors, colleagues, and again, the more information that we're able to obtain, the more informed we'll be. So that's all I have right there at the moment on the open space plan update, but we are working on it and anticipate that we'll be in a position to adopt the plan in 2024. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and okay. And are there any questions on the open space plan update? I think it's pretty straightforward. All right. If there are no other questions, I recognize it's a beautiful spring day out there. So I want to take this time to once again thank Mike for taking time out of his schedule and also time away from his vacation to join us today. So Mike, our sincere gratitude for that and for sharing your wealth of knowledge. Very beneficial to all of us. And I want to thank the participants for taking time out of your busy days to join us this evening. Please stay posted. We plan on having additional series of webinars in the months ahead. A little plug for the Orange County Municipal Planning Federation. They're going to have a Planning 101 session coming up next Monday, and encourage that information is also provided on our website. That's a session that's going to start at 6 p.m. and will be hosted over at SUNY Orange in Middletown. So with that, going to sign off. Mike, do you have any parting words for our guests?
I would just say persist, stick with it. It's important for the future of Orange County, the Hudson Valley, your communities. And it's worth fighting for. It's definitely worth fighting for.
Thank you. Okay, I wish everyone
Thank you. And I just one thing for Mike. Mike, I went to the State University of Potsdam, and we didn't like you guys taking all the women from Potsdam.
Well, you had all the women that and back in my day.
I
so.
know, and you had all the guys who were gonna be engineers and everything.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Okay.